What do you do when you are afraid? Like, what do you do when you get that feeling in your stomach, that feeling that we call fear? Do you run? Do you hide? Do you scream like a little girl? Do you cry? Like, what do you do when you are afraid? I remember the first time I ever went on a roller coaster. Now, all my friends had done it before me when I was a kid, and they loved it. They think it's fun, and like, woo, they're thrill seekers, right? And I thought it was gonna be great for me, but I remember getting strapped in my very first time to a roller coaster, and I'm shaking. I'm terrified, okay? My hands are getting sweaty. I feel this thing in my stomach, and I remember like clunk, 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 like I'm rising to the top of this roller coaster, and then it drops, and I am terrified. I'm screaming like a little girl. Everyone is making fun of me because it was scary. I was terrified. I was horrified about this thing. Another thing I was scared of when I was a kid is needles. I hated getting needles. I hated getting my shot. And I remember in grade 5, these healthcare people came to our school. They're giving us all these shots. And all my friends are going, saying it doesn't hurt. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And I'm trying to play it off cool. But I'm sweating through my clothes. My hands are shaking. I feel this feeling in my stomach. And I literally wanted to run away. It got so bad that a teacher had to hold my hand while I was getting my shot. Everyone's making fun of me, and I was terrified. I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling of fear. And if you're anything like me, you hate the feeling of fear too, but you might get some enjoyment out of seeing fear in other people. You might get some enjoyment out of scaring other people. I know for me, I have this weird obsession with hiding behind corners or hiding behind doors and scaring people. My little brother knows this all too well. Like when we are both home at the same time, I will literally wait like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes outside of his bedroom door, just waiting to jump out and scare him. I will wait outside of the bathroom while he's like doing his business just so I can like jump out and scare him because I love hearing those screams. I love seeing that look in his eye like what is going, I love that. And I know if you are in a relationship and if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, one of the best things that you can do to get a scare is when you're watching a movie and the lights get low and it's getting dark and it's quiet in the movie and you just make like an obscure loud like random sudden sound like and you just like they jump, they're like don't like fear is this super interesting thing. It is part of life. In some senses it's kind of unavoidable. And the Bible has a ton to say about fear. Fear is this huge commandment in the Bible. Like when you think about what is the most repeated command in the Bible, what comes to mind? Probably something about, sex or lying or like greed or murder or like something like really serious like that. No. The most repeated command in the Bible is something like do not fear or do not be afraid or fear not. There's many, many passages. Here's just a few. Isaiah 41:10 says, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. See, the Bible is talking about this idea of fear over and over and over again. It's constantly commanding, do not fear, do not be afraid, do not be frightened, fear not, over and over and over again. And I think we can all understand this, right? Like we've all experienced fear. Like fear is a part of everyday life, but fear can be gripping. Right? Like fear can grab a hold of your life and can actually begin to control the very things that you are doing. Fear has this weird way of influencing us in our minds, in the way that we act, in the way that we think, in the way that we sleep, or even in the way that we make decisions. You see, fear can be powerful. You want to do something, but you are just terrified about what other people will think of you. If you're a Christian, what is the main reason why you aren't sharing your faith with your friends? You're scared of what they're going to say. You're scared of what they're going to think, or that they're going to think you're weird, or you won't have the right things to say. What is the reason why on the weekends you just constantly are checking social media and scrolling through your feed over and over, checking everyone's stories? FOMO, fear of missing out. Like you think that you're in, but you are constantly worried that you might be on the outside. This is fear. What is it for you? What is the thing that you fear? What is the thing that has a hold of you? What's the thing that is gripping you and controlling and influencing the way that you make decisions? You see, the thing that is often controlling your life might actually be the thing that you are most afraid of. What is it for you? Maybe it's fear of the future. You're worried that you're going to make the wrong decisions in life and it is just going to set you up for failure. Maybe it's fear of relationships. Maybe it's fear of not fitting in. Maybe it's fear of rejection. Maybe it's just fear of what other people will think about you. What is it for you? Fear comes at us in many different ways, right? Like these moments in our lives, these things that we are afraid of, they can attach to us and begin to control and influence us in many different ways. I remember when I was a cabin leader at this camp a long time ago. We're in the dining hall, it's time to eat, and this girl started choking on her food. This little camper, she was okay, but in the moment, like it was terrifying for me. I was right there. This guy had to come and give her first aid, and I watched the whole thing. She ended up being okay, but that moment stuck with me for the rest of the summer. I'm having dreams about people I know choking. I remember my kids, the campers in my cabin, they're eating, and I'm like trying to cut up all their food really small. Like we're eating snack during snack time. I'm like the most paranoid cabin leader of all time, right? Like they're eating like Skittles by the handful. I'm like, everyone stop it, like one at a time. Like we need to really chew our food. Like we're all sitting in our beds in a circle, like eating very, very carefully because I'm paranoid. This fear had grabbed a hold of my life, and it was controlling the way that I viewed everything. It was controlling the very way that I was living. So you need to ask yourself, what are you afraid of? What is the thing that you fear most? Are you terrified to put yourself out there because you were so worried about what other people are going to think of you? Are you scared to make big decisions because you are terrified of the future? Do you find yourself constantly scrolling through social media because you fear missing out and you want to be included? What is it for you? You see, fears will come. Fear is part of everyday life. So the question isn't how do we avoid all fears? The question is, what are you going to do when fears arise? Fear is this very interesting thing, and it's something that we all experience in life. It's something that we all share, but fear can begin to twist reality. Fear can begin to distort reality and twist the very way that you view things and the way that you think about things and the way that you live your everyday life. It can twist reality. And in Mark chapter 4, we see this very thing. You see, up to this story, Jesus is doing all sorts of things already. He is healing people of their sickness. He heals a paralyzed man. He's teaching parables. He's forgiving people of their sins. And he's doing all sorts of amazing things. And this big crowd has begun to follow him. So what happens? Him and his bros, his disciples, they jump into this boat and they head to the other side of the sea to get some distance from people, to relax a little bit. And this is what it says. Mark chapter 4, verse 37. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. But he, Jesus, was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke, and he rebuked the wind and the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with a great fear and said to one another, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" So here's the thing. Fear actually begins to distort reality. It can twist reality. Like these men in this story, the disciples, they'd been with Jesus for quite a while already, and they'd already seen him do amazing things. Like they'd seen Jesus raise a paralyzed man back up. They'd seen him healing people of their sickness and teaching all sorts of things and even claiming to forgive sins. Things only God himself can do, but yet their fear was blinding them. It was twisting reality. They were so focused on this storm and the fact that, they're terrified. They think that they are going to die. Well, at the very same time, Jesus himself, God himself, is sitting there in the boat with them. So Jesus gets up and he does what only God himself can do. He calms the storm. He calms the sea. He rebukes the storm and it all stops. Something only God can do. And then he looks at these men and he says, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" Man, if the disciples had just taken some time to stop and realize who was in the boat with them, who is going through this fear with them, who is going through the storm with them, then they would have realized that this storm was actually a very small thing. Their fear was a very small thing. It wasn't actually a very big problem because Jesus was going through it with them. For us, we have to come to terms with the fact that we are going to face moments in life that are scary. Like the Bible and Jesus do not promise that we're going to live this comfortable, easy life where we're never going to face things that are scary again. We are. But instead of letting fear consume you, instead of letting fear control your life, Jesus is asking that we would lean into him. It's about posture, that we would lean not into fear, but lean into faith. You see, part of having faith in Jesus is learning to trust in a Savior that does not deliver us from our storms, but delivers us through our storms. And here's what I mean by that. One pastor says this: what Jesus wants to do is he wants to wrap his arms around us and walk us straight through our fears, and then turn us around and show us that we didn't really have much to be afraid of in the first place, because he was with us the entire time. Jesus goes with you through the storms. Jesus is with the disciples on the boat. And what's he doing? He's not freaking out. So when you are going through this storm, When you're going through those things that make you uncomfortable and they make you afraid, you have no reason to freak out because Jesus is there and he is not freaking out. He's going through this storm with you. This same Jesus that gets up and he calms the storm is powerful over all of creation. He's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So what do you have to fear if he is with you? Nothing. Do not be afraid. Don't let fear grab a hold of you. Don't let fear control you. Instead, lean into Jesus. You see, the thing that controls you ultimately comes down to your posture. Will you have a posture of fear or will you have a posture of faith? When you are facing a scary moment in life, what will you lean into? Will you lean into Jesus or will you lean into your fears? Because that will dictate what is controlling you. So I'll ask you the same question that I asked you at the very beginning of this talk. What do you do when you are afraid? Do you believe that Jesus is with you in the midst of your fears? Are you moved by the person of Jesus or are you moved by your fears? Is Jesus the one running your life or is it something else? What do you fear? What do you do when you are afraid? What do you lean into, your fears or Jesus? In 1 John, there is a passage that says, perfect love casts out fear. And I love that. What's perfect love? It's God coming down and living amongst us. This blameless, this perfect, this innocent life of a servant king. It's God coming down on the cross and taking our place, suffering and dying on our behalf when we did nothing to deserve it. And then rising again 3 days later. That is perfect love. That casts out fear. So what would it look like for you to truly believe that on the cross, Jesus did what it took to overcome even the worst of your fears? That because of his victory on the cross, you have nothing to be afraid of. I mean, when life gets hard, don't forget who's on your side. On the cross, Jesus overcame even the worst of your fears. You have nothing to be afraid of anymore. When life does get scary, don't forget who's going through it with you. Don't forget who's on your side going through your fears with you. Jesus, this powerful ruler king who rules over all of creation, is going through your fear with you. And he did exactly what it took on the cross to overcome all of your fears. Your fears no longer have control. Fears do not have the last word. Pain does not have the last word. Death does not even have the last word. Jesus does. Don't lean into fear. Don't give fear control. Don't let fear run your life. Let Jesus run your life. Let Jesus have control. Lean on Jesus. Don't lean into fear, lean into faith. Lean into Jesus. Let him carry you through it. And remember that you are not alone. Jesus is going through it with you, and he did exactly what it took to overcome all of your worst fears. So I hope you guys have a great discussion, and we will see you guys next week. Fear is this very interesting thing. It can begin to... what people think or say about you no longer has to have the last word. Don't lean into fear, lean into faith. You see, to trust in a Savior who doesn't deliver us from our fears, but who delivers us through our... Okay, we're going to retry that whole part.